Namaskar. Welcome to yet another episode on Beyond Headlines with me and my dear friend Apoorva. Apoorva, we talk about an interesting subject today, and it's been in the headlines for some reasons, and that is migration. Migration of HNIs, high net worth individuals from India to territories abroad. We are not talking of the likes of Nirav Modi, Mehul Chokshi, Vijay Mallya, who actually migrate by running away. We are talking about legal migration. Legal migration of people who have got wealth, who got all the money to be able to choose where they wish to live in this world. The favorite destinations are always of developed nations. Persons migrate from India to developed nations, and thus the favorite destinations for migrating from India for HNIs is the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe come a distant third, fourth, or fifth, but the prime destination remains the US. The reason, according to us, for that is certainly better opportunities of business, better work opportunities, probably a more cleaner system of working, better ease of doing business, at times for health reasons, very often, of course, also for better conditions of living, and we think education. A recent report which has been released says that 5,000 HNIs migrated from India last year, which constitutes, incidentally, 2% of India's HNIs. And if 2% go every year, in 50 years, India will be left with no HNIs. This trend has been on a rising mode. But India is not the only country from where people migrate. Russia and China are far ahead of India. In fact, China had 15,000 HNIs migrating out of China, mostly to the US last year, to such an extent that today Chinese migration is looked at not from the most favorable angle by the US administration. The Indian laws do permit such migration. They also permit persons to take their wealth away and settle abroad. Apoorva, I have a few questions.
Yes.
You have been noticing this trend.
Yes.
And more Indians, I'm sure you have been getting inquiries of people wanting to migrate abroad.
True.
What are the primary reasons, according to you?
So, Akhilesh, there are basically three reasons for which people look at migration. One could be purely from a business angle, where somebody wants to establish business out and is looking at that expansion, and part of the family would then move to handle the businesses outside. One could be a very generic, normal way where people think that, India, you've had with ease of doing business or otherwise, it's better to have one feet somewhere else. And in case of safety, in case of any other, so somebody who is wealthy enough may want to have a second line of defense. So even though there may not be immediate business reasons, but I would want to create a second line of defense for my shifting someday.
I do remember for quite a number of years or decades after independence, a lot of wealthy Indians always used to question the stability of India's democracy. And I remember people saying that some wealth must be outside India. Does that thought still prevail, or is it more from business synergies?
No, it still prevails.
And, that kind of a thought still prevails.
It still prevails. Probably amongst the wealthy ones, this has grown a little more than even before. So, there are people who feel that there has to be a second line of defense. And the third point that I was mentioning was a very genuine reason for students, the aspiring students who want to study abroad. And once you study abroad in good universities, you may want to settle down there and for better prospects world over. So there could be three reasons for someone to look at migration. One, as I said, could be just a safety net. The other two are a little more genuine.
So the question here is, these kind of migrations, are you seeing a reversal of trend where this kind of relocation of wealth and migration earlier used to be by virtue of those famous undisclosed Swiss accounts, and that used to take a person abroad? Right. What is the trend at the moment, according to you?
No, I don't think that Swiss angle is anywhere seen in the last few years. I think somewhere people are going with a mindset that anywhere in the world if you go, you will have to be more compliant than ever before. So I think it is not because of lack of compliance that people think that, let's shift elsewhere. There are genuine reasons for which people are moving out. Or probably there could be a fear of over-compliance of some kinds, and they might want to have a safety net, as I spoke initially. But generally speaking, this is not to do with the fear of compliance any longer. people move for actual, real reasons only.
You know, I can tell you as a tax consultant,
Yes,
especially in the last few years, globally, every country has got what are called tax information exchange
Absolutely.
agreements.
Absolutely.
India has got such agreements with over 100 nations today.
Right.
Information is shared in real-time basis online.
Yes.
So if you are a resident Indian and you open a secret account, let's say in Australia, you can be sure in about 3 months' time the Indian authorities would come to know of it.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure these kind of factors, cooperation between countries, have become increasing phenomena.
Yes.
Plus, I think in the last few years, because of that huge HSBC bank saga after that Panama Papers leaked out,
Agreed.
and various leaks that have been happening, Indians are being dissuaded to open up any kind of hidden accounts. I'm sure people now believe accounts will not remain hidden at all.
True. I completely agree.
So which means remittances or migrations are happening officially.
Yes.
Typically, a migration of this sort happening in your experience, which are the favorite destinations?
So you gave this in your starting note itself, is generally speaking, people will look at US or Canada amongst the first two most preferred places. Education could drive, some of the universities down south to Australia or New Zealand as well, because New Zealand has emerged to be a nice place for education purposes. So, but ultimately, it all boils around the same thing. If it is for business reasons, people prefer America or Canada as destinations, a little bit of Europe possibly. Education, you are slightly more wide open. Not a very preferred destination for migrating otherwise, but for education purposes, people have started looking at even Russia for that matter.
Oh,
So education could be a different ballgame. Settlement or permanent settlement or having residencies, the preferences will still remain US and Canada to a large extent.
so if you go by history, it's a developed nation
Absolutely.
that attracts people from
Undoubtedly.
underdeveloped ones. At a time when we were the most developed, we had the Mughals and the Arabs coming in.
Absolutely.
Later on, we had the Brits coming in. We were
Yes.
more developed than them. The Greeks came, the Huns came, the Huns
True.
came because we were the developed.
It's a natural phenomenon.
It's a natural phenomenon.
Absolutely.
So what happened earlier now is a reverse flow.
Absolutely.
And now Indians have been going to those territories.
True.
Now, how has the experience been of Indians going to, let's say, the countries like the US? How soon do they get assimilated there?
So, Akhilesh, what happens is that any country for that matter has become stricter and stricter in terms of being able to accept the migrants into the country. US is no different. We are seeing it in form of H1B visa and the strictness that we have seen, especially under Trump administration.
But
It's
Indians
been
still corner
really
it.
strict. Yes. So
I think we are the preferred.
we are the preferred one currently, of course, yes. And there are a lot of other data points which do suggest this. So while there has been strictness on H1B visa front, obviously, there are other routes which have still remained open, like the EB5 route by which somebody can make an investment, which creates American jobs for you to be qualified as.
So
an
how
American
does the
resident.
EB5 work according to you? Because one has been seeing rising popularity of it.
Yes, there has been, in the last 1 year itself, there has been a threefold or a little more kind of a growth in terms of Indians migrating under the EB5 route. EB5 is a program started long back by the US government to accommodate people into US, but in turn that should generate US jobs.
Oh, so it goes on an investment
It's a
requirement.
it's a money at risk is what they call. So money should be at risk. You invest into businesses out there. It is not an investment into equities or bond markets that will qualify for EB5. But as long as you are able to generate 10 American jobs with your money, you qualify to become an American resident that way. And this has been a preferred route for multiple reasons. One, the business angle where you access capital at a much lower rate of interest out there and the business environment is far better. Ease of doing business is far better and there are a lot of data points for us to talk about. Similarly for students, it's a major advantage for them, for a student who goes there, because you have huge concessions in your fees, ample opportunities for great universities for you to study there and all that stuff. So all put together, there is definitely a growing demand for EB5 that we've been seeing.
So I have a question to you. As I understand,
Yes.
an EB5 visa means invest $500,000 in
Absolutely.
the US and you get a green card to stay.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people in the Middle Eastern countries would have those $500,000. Does the US really encourage irrespective of the region?
So there are two things. People who have that kind of money, and even India numbers. So let's take the entire macro picture here. If I look at the numbers between China and India, and that's a better comparison for us to make in this stage. Just about 3 years back, out of the quota of 10,000 residents that US can absorb, we had almost about 7,500 odd applicants coming from China alone.
Oh.
Right? And India
No
was,
wonder Trump doesn't like them.
and India was just under 150. Now, if you had only 150 people migrating into US under EB5, that number has gone to 584 in last year. So there's been a significant increase there, and the Chinese numbers have dropped significantly. So we're seeing some kind of trend reversal of that sort. But in general, the trend is very much there that Indians are a lot more welcome. Even the processing time for an average Indian is much lesser than what it takes for some of the other countries. So clearly indicates that Indians are amongst the favored lots.
But then, if you see from an Indian perspective, HNI migrating abroad means wealth goes,
absolutely,
talent goes abroad, entrepreneurial skills go abroad, networking benefits go abroad. So India does lose. So if I talk from an Indian perspective, I think the government needs to ensure that it keeps its HNIs attracted and grounded into India. Otherwise, I think it's a loss for India. It's an exodus out of India.
So there are two things in which the government needs to work on. One, of course, the ease of doing business. If this continues to improve, things might change someday. Second thing is education. These are the two areas where maximum exodus, if we use that word, happens. If these two areas are looked up, then possibly the next 5 years could be different.
So I think what we need is far better universities.
Yes.
And we need universities which are very up to date with what is needed to be learnt in the world.
Absolutely.
And the most important is opportunities for business.
Absolutely.
And ease of doing business.
Completely.
So at the moment, it means that whichever comparative countries we take, like for example, I can tell you, in the ease of doing business ranking globally, New Zealand is number 1.
Absolutely.
We have, with all the improvement that Mr. Modi did, is I think around 75. So ease of doing business, I think, still is a reason why people migrate abroad.
From a business standpoint, yes.
Apart from thinking that if I have the big bucks, let me have a better living style, a better lifestyle at the end of the day.
True. But Akhilesh, one more thing as well. One of the reasons why we had lesser number of Indians migrating is that there are still a lot of people in India who believe that if you have $500,000 for you to invest outside India, you are in which case living a good life in India. Now, when I look at this versus a Chinese mindset, $500,000 is practically nothing for them. So for them to spend that kind of money to migrate into US, there is a different reason.
But I think the Chinese would be migrating because of their political system.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a system where freedom is suppressed. You're talking about such a large country where even the internet is monitored clinically and ruthlessly. So from that perspective, China gets different. I think from our perspective, it becomes a better quality of life.
Exactly.
Better
so the reasoning for shifting to under EB5 or something is very, very different between the two countries.
Absolutely, in terms of the thought process of the person's concerned.
Yes.
So that comes to another topic. Have you been seeing a reversal of that after a person migrates? Does the person come back, or he's gone for good?
So it depends. See, the entire trend of EB5 is a relatively new phenomenon. The H1B visa, most of the applicants under H1B visa were the software guys who were working there. For them to come back to India was a rarity. Let's accept.
So an EB5 will also be a rarity.
In that sense, it is likely to be a rarity. Unless somebody goes in for a business purpose and finds India to be an equally decent opportunity, you may possibly look at. But generally speaking, an average Indian who spends this kind of money is not spending this kind of money to come back to India.
The disturbing part, Apoorva, for me is, while HNIs, and I'm not talking about them from the fact that they are wealthy, but they do have certain merits for the Indian society in terms of their, talent, expertise, experience. They are good brand ambassadors for us.
Yes.
While that's the exodus out of India, the exodus into India is of a very different sort, which are those political repressed neighbors of ours.
Agreed.
And in the process, we give out a good quality of our section of population and don't get such a good one either.
True.
I would be worried about it.
If we are looking at the net number may be the same, but the better quality is moving out and not so good quality is coming in.
And I think that's a loss for India.
That's a concern.
That's a concern. So here we are talking about migration out of India, and we see that it goes to developed nations. And those who go are actually those who can afford to go, which are the rich Indians, the talented Indians, the entrepreneurial Indians, for whom the world is a stage on its own. I think such kind of a migration in larger numbers is not good for the country. Both Apoorva and I would think so.
Absolutely.
It would be important for the government to look at it as a matter of concern and stop such an exodus. Otherwise, you can be sure, if you got the bucks, every country would want to attract you and ask you to settle there. And many of them, even if the bucks are illegal, talk about a Mehul Chokshi and a Nirav Modi, they will still want you to be there because the bucks matter. I think for us, these HNIs matter and India must try to retain them. This is Apoorva and me signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.